And welcome back to another episode of the Chips Podcast. Tyler Melito, as always, alongside Ryan Amick. Ryan, you went to New Hampshire this past weekend. That's why we couldn't record. But how are you, sir?
Been great. I had a little mini vacation, a 4-day weekend, as you would say, in New Hampshire. I had a lot of fun. Hung out with my mom's friend from college, actually, that we've been hanging out with for quite some time now, a bunch of years. We go up there, and they live right by the beach, so it's a good time. But glad to be back. Have some more sports to talk about. Finally, we just invited baseball back to our lives this past week. Now we have basketball tomorrow night, the final return to NBA action. It's been a long time since we had real NBA games going. There's been some scrimmages going on this past week, but it's good to finally get this regular season done. They have 8 games in the regular season. All 22 teams have to play. Then we get into the play-in tournament for the 8th and 9th seeds in each conference. And then finally, NBA playoffs will start, and I'm very excited for that.
As am I. I mean, first of all, baseball in the door, and now it might be out the door with all the positive tests in the Marlins. Although, of the other 29 teams, no positive tests. The Marlins are the only team that's had it, so that's a good sign. But, like you mentioned, basketball back tomorrow. We're recording this on Wednesday, July, 29th? Yes, I had to double-check the date. Thursday, July 30th is when you're going to be watching this, and basketball is back. We got Pelicans, Jazz, Lakers, Clippers. Should be fun matchups. But, Ryan, let's play a fun little game. If you've ever watched Colin Cowherd's show, The Herd, or is he still on there now?
Oh, yeah. I watch him pretty much every day.
I wasn't sure if he retired because I don't remember.
No, he's still going strong, putting out good content. Mm-hmm. And we credited him, so we're not stealing from him, but this isn't a Colin Cowherd-inspired segment, but go on.
Yes. So we're going to play a 3-word game. So we're each going to go through all 22 teams that will be in the NBA's bubble at Walt Disney World and assign 3 words to summarize, our expectations or feelings on these teams ahead of the restart. So without further ado, let's start with the Eastern Conference and the best team in the entire NBA, the Milwaukee Bucks. Ryan, you start.
Yeah, so for the Milwaukee Bucks, my 3 words for them: most valuable player. For them, it's all about Giannis. Most people have him winning MVP in the regular season. We've had a podcast in the past debating if he should get the MVP or not in the regular season. Either way, he's definitely one of the best players in this league, the obvious focal points of the Bucks. 2-way player, amazing on offense and defense, pretty much unstoppable once he gets inside the paint. He's just the heart of that Milwaukee team, and it's going to be interesting to see how far he could take them. They're favored to go to the finals in the Eastern Conference. Last year they were as well, but couldn't get it done with Kawhi and the Raptors getting in their way. Now that Kawhi is gone, it'll be interesting to see, can he take the next step and go to the finals and live up to what most people are calling maybe the best player in the NBA right now. So this whole team really revolves around Giannis, even though they have other great pieces on this team, like All-Star Chris Middleton, like Brook Lopez, who's a good rim protector. Fell off a little bit in three-point shooting, but still a solid piece on that team. It's just really about Giannis. That's why it's most valuable player for the Milwaukee Bucks.
I like where you're going with that. I also have a Giannis theme to mine. I do think Giannis has the opportunity to win back-to-back MVPs. But where I'm going to go with him is they must impress Giannis, the Milwaukee Bucks will. After this season, Giannis is eligible for the Supermax contract extension, which is a 5-year deal worth a boatload of money. I don't know what the exact number would be off the top of my head. And if the Bucks fail to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals or underperform in the playoffs entirely, Giannis might be starting to look elsewhere for his pending free agency in 2021. There's been rumors to him possibly going to Golden State, rumors of him teaming up with his brothers in LA with the Lakers, rumors of him going to Miami to team up with Jimmy Butler and that whole we'll talk about. Overall, though, the Bucks just got to do it. Chris Middleton, he came out during this whole quarantine and said, I don't have access to a basketball. How is that possible? You're an NBA All-Star and you don't have access.
Something similar too, like
but Giannis, I think, is full of it.
No,
he was. I actually believe this.
Yeah.
And then Eric Bledsoe, he's had his battle with COVID-19, so he's coming back. Who knows where his health status is? Although he says he's good, there's been issues with respiratory complications because of the virus. That could play a huge part. And as you mentioned, they got some other nice players in like Brook Lopez, Robin Lopez, Wesley Matthews, et cetera, et cetera. But if the Bucks fail to perform, Giannis, I think, will start looking elsewhere for the rest of his NBA career because he wants to start winning championships. The MVPs are nice, but the rings are what he wants more.
Yeah, he's definitely rumored to go to some teams possibly in next offseason if the Bucks can't get it done with him on the team. And one of those teams that he's been rumored that you didn't actually mention is the Toronto Raptors, actually.
That's true.
We have next on our word game. And I kind of did this one a little differently than the others. It's an equation, but it has 3 words in it. So it's Toronto minus Klaw equals Pretenders. Because to me, they're going to miss Kawhi's presence very greatly. And don't get me wrong, I didn't really want to put the word Pretenders in there because I think this is definitely a solid team. Top 3 team defensive rating, both sides of the ball, they're solid. Nick Nurse, we've said, should be the coach of the year. He's coached his team very well with the absence of Kawhi now that he left for the LA Clippers. So I don't think this team is a pushover by any means. I love Pascal Siakam. He has merged into a superstar before our very eyes. But in this league, it's really a matter of, do you have a duo pairing of superstars to get it done? We saw multiple teams like the Lakers with Davis and LeBron, and the Clippers with Paul George, Kawhi, the Rockets, James Harden, Westbrook, to go on and on. Real contenders usually have 2 superstar-level talents to help them take them over the edge. And Kawhi did a lot of the heavy lifting for them last year in the playoffs. With him gone, I just don't know how far this Toronto team can get. I wouldn't be surprised if they do make the Eastern Conference Finals. They are a very, very good team, very deep. Have a lot of players you might not have heard of, like Terrence Davis and Chris Boucher. I hope I'm probably saying that wrong.
Boucher, I think it is, but
Boucher. A lot of guys that are undrafted, unheard of. Guys like Fred VanVleet, who he's become a household name because he helped them win the ring. But like underappreciated guys who I think could definitely help this team and are the fabric of this team. But without Kawhi, I think they'll see how much he helped them win a title last year.
Yeah, I agree with you there. The Raptors, thank you for bringing in math to this podcast, as if it wasn't complicated enough. But, yeah, the Kawhi factor was huge because he was the star of this team last season. They've shown they can do it in the regular season, but can they do it when it counts in the playoffs? And I kind of have that similar theme as well. For me, my 3 words are depends on seeding. The Raptors, they have a definite chance to repeat if they are the 2 or the 3 seed. If they can avoid Milwaukee in the second round, they will have a legit shot of making it back to the finals. Because although I don't think it happens that they fall to the 4 or 5 seed, they're 5.5 games up on Miami, who currently holds the 4 seed. So it's a lot of work left to be done for the Heat to vault up that high. But crazier things have happened. And if the Raptors fall to 4, that means they would have to face Milwaukee most likely in the second round. That really stifles their chances. It'll be a tough round for both teams in the semifinals, but it really stifled the Raptors' chances of repeating. And another way they can get significantly tougher road to the finals is if they drop to the 3 seed. Right now, Philly is in that 6th spot. I expect them to jump ahead of Indiana, who holds the 5 spot, given the fact that Sabonis is out, which is a huge loss. Oladipo, who knows where he stands. But if they drop the 3 and Philly stays at 6, Philly, they've experimented with some things that could really help them, and we'll talk more about them later. But the Raptors, I think they need to lock up the 2 seed to have a legitimate chance of at least making it back to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, the Sixers we'll definitely get to in a minute. I'm very high on them as well. But the team that they're facing as of right now in the current standings would be the Boston Celtics, who are currently the 3rd seed in the East. And for them, I did a little play on words of a popular Khalid song you probably know, Young, Dumb and Broke. I don't know if you've heard of that.
You know I listen to country music. Come on.
Have you not heard that song? Come on. I thought even
probably
you,
have.
Strange taste in music, would have heard it. But I did a little play on words on that. The Boston Celtics are young, deep, and fixed. A little cringe, but it makes sense because each adjective makes a lot of sense for the Boston Celtics. They are very young, which is a good and a bad thing because they have budding superstars. Jason Tatum, we saw this year, especially after the All-Star break, exploded. Looks like an MVP-level talent. Jaylen Brown, also very young, one of their high draft picks that they got from the Nets, along with that Tatum pick and other picks as well. Those are the core of that Celtics team that was really hampered in past years with Kyrie and that whole debacle that failed in years prior. But they got fixed a lot, which is part of the title, because of Kemba Walker and what he's done with his teammate chemistry, how just the team is run around spreading the ball to people like Tatum, who didn't have as many shot opportunities in past years, and letting them shine and break through to a top seed in the East and have a lot better year than they had last year. And they're deep as well. They're not only their starting lineup is full of stars, switchable guys, create their own shot, and very valuable players in a playoff setting, but they also have guys on the bench like Marcus Smart or even Enes Kanter, who could be a solid offensive player, gets a lot of offensive rebounds, as I know on his time on the Knicks. He gave us a lot of second chance opportunities, which could be very big in a playoff setting. And this team has a lot of promise. A lot of people are high on them, think they could even make the finals. I would put my brakes a little bit on that. I think them being so young kind of holds them back a little bit, and also going back to that superstar formula. Sure, Tatum's great. Kemba's awesome, all-star level. Jaylen Brown's close to that as well. But they don't have a guaranteed top 15 player in the league, which it's really hard. I would not call Tatum top 15 yet. I know you made that face, but he's close. So next year he could be top 15. But like as of tomorrow when the season starts, I just don't know how far they will get with this lineup. And they have a really tough matchup if the Sixers are meeting them in the 6th seed. So I like this team. I wouldn't say they're guaranteed to make the finals or win a title or anything, but they are young. They are very deep, and Kemba helped fix their teammate chemistry. So they have a very bright future in Boston, whether that means a title this year, next year, or whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree with you on the fact that the impact Kemba Walker has had on this team is immense. And I think it goes uncredited given the development of Tatum, of Brown, of Marcus Smart, and the departure of Kyrie Irving. But my 3 words are very simple. Jason Tatum's time. I think he is a top 15 player as it stands. He might be number 15, but he's still in the top 15. The guy is unstoppable. If you remember before the stoppage, Jason Tatum has channeled his inner Kobe Bryant, someone who he idolized. Obviously, Kobe passed away. He's dedicated basically this season, although I don't think he's come out and said it, to his mentor in Kobe. But he's been on a tear. Since that Kobe's tragic death on January 26th, the Boston Celtics have been 13-7, which included a 7-game win streak during that stretch. And during that time, Tatum has averaged over 28 points per game, which exceeds his just over 23 points per game average from the entire season. This is his chance to possibly enter the superstar tier if he plays really, really well. And I think he can carry this team to the Eastern Conference Finals. I personally think, although in our episode previewing the NBA restart a couple weeks ago, check that out down below in the full playlist, shameless plug, I said that the Bucks will probably make it to the finals. I actually don't remember who I said, but you get my point. The Celtics, I think, have the best shot of upsetting the Bucks, in my opinion. Top to bottom, like you mentioned, they have great depth. Top to bottom, it helps. And look for the Celtics to make some noise in the playoffs and possibly even carry that over into 2021.
I think for that to happen, they would have to make the Eastern Conference Finals. And also, I think looking at that team, who's going to stop Giannis? Like, if we're being real, like Tatum.
If Giannis gets tired, though, like he did last year, there's a chance.
He had Kawhi Leonard, one of the best defenders in the league, guarding him. But either way, I agree with you. Celtics, very stacked team. Wouldn't be surprised if they go far in the playoffs. Looking ahead now to the 4th seed, the Miami Heat got 3 U's for you. Undrafted, underrated, underappreciated. A mantra that's embodied by their star that they signed in free agency, Jimmy Butler. Ever since he got drafted with the 30th pick in his draft class, he had a chip on his shoulder. He felt like he was underappreciated. No one thought he'd be a star, never mind an all-star, never mind even a superstar now at this level. He's always played with a chip on his shoulder. No one thought the Heat would be this high in the playoff rankings. They are 4th in the current standings. So they just became out of nowhere. Great team. A lot of undrafted players as well. You look at Kendrick Nunn, the rookie, who's in contention for Rookie of the Year, especially in the beginning half of the season because of his shot creation and a little playmaking chops as well. He had some pretty good numbers. Duncan Robinson, undrafted, came out of nowhere, was one of the top shooters in the league, ranked top 5 in three-point percentage and three-pointers made, just shooting the lights out of the building, and led to the Heat having one of the top 5, I believe, three-point shooting teams in the league. Also, Derek Jones, a rotation player, another undrafted player. This team is just full of underappreciated, undrafted players that no one thought could make it in this league, and they've come together. They've had a bunch of work ethic, and they're proving to be one of the best teams in the East, very deep as well. And they're pretty similar, as I mentioned, to the Raptors, who have a lot of maybe unheard of guys, maybe guys who right out of college weren't thought of as very highly, and now they're proving everybody wrong. They're a very solid team. Then you also look at guys like Goran Dragic. Not a lot of people talk about coming off the bench. If he played most of the year, he dealt with some injuries. He could have been in contention for sixth man of the year. He's scored very highly off the bench for this team. Also, they got Andre Iguodala from the Grizzlies, Jay Crowder, some good defensive wings that are good for a playoff team like that. So this whole team just reeks of underdog mentality, a bunch of the U's I already said. I'm very high on this team as well, and they could be a team where if they do have to face the Bucks, they could give them trouble because someone like Bam Adebayo, who I didn't even mention yet, all-star this year, most improved player probably, he's someone who could actually guard Giannis and do a very good job of it, and also force them to guard the perimeter a lot because the strong suit for the Miami Heat is three-point shooting for sure. So this team, don't sleep on them. Don't sleep on Jimmy Butler. The impact he had on the Sixers last year, despite them falling short in Game 7 from, of course, that Kawhi shot. We'll see how valuable Jimmy Butler really is in these playoffs and in the future if they do end up getting maybe some free agents to help them out there in Miami.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You almost kind of took away my 3 words. It's could upset Milwaukee. This Heat team, they are so good top to bottom. Like you mentioned, Jimmy Butler has taken on the role of the mentor of this team. He's proven that he is a number 1 option on an NBA roster and embodies what this Heat culture is. Guys who play hard every single night. And he has perfectly taken the torch from Dwayne Wade as the leader of this franchise. And then you got guys like Bam Adebayo, who is my pick for most improved player of the year. Give me some Bam. I'm excited to see what he does in the playoffs. He's played phenomenal all year. Can't wait to watch him. And then, like you mentioned, the rookies. Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, balled out. You don't get that from a lot of rookies, especially towards the later part of the first round or even undrafted rookies like Nunn was. Guys, they have just stepped up immensely. They fill their roles. They know their roles. They're not taking their egos. That's the other thing. This is a very egoless team. The guys on this Miami Heat roster, it's all about the team. It's not so much about the me. Duncan Robinson, he's emerged as a laser three-point shooter, one of the best in the game. And then, like you mentioned, they have a bunch of savvy veterans. Goran Dragic, Myers Leonard, Kelly Olynyk, Andre Iguodala, Jay Crowder, on and on and on. Derek Jones Jr. This team is loaded top to bottom. They can give Milwaukee a bunch of fits. I think Bam and Giannis, that matchup, if it happens, will be fun to watch. And I think Bam has the edge. Giannis, he can do a lot of things on the basketball court. But I think Bam is a big enough brick wall. That's the thing, too. Miami's got a bunch of guys who then just throw at Giannis to slow him down. Bam, Iguodala, Olynyk, Leonard. Just guys, bodies that can slow Giannis down. And even if the Bucks do win that series, Giannis is going to be exhausted for the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, it could be a repeat of the Raptors who had that same formula, just slow Giannis down, throw a bunch of bodies on him, and make him work and tire him out. And it ended up working for the Raptors, could end up working for the Heat. You mentioned how they're unselfish, so you think that a lot to Eric Spoelstra. He's done that throughout his career as a coach. He's been a great coach for this team, also in the Coach of the Year contention. Looking to the 5th seed now, the Indiana Pacers could be their likely matchup. I have Victorious with Oladipo. See the play on word I did there.
I get it.
So the thing I actually was behind the 8 ball a little bit here because I just found out that Sabonis might be out for the bubble because of injury, which is
he is out. He's done. He's left.
Is he gone for like the season? Like no
he's
matter
left the
what?
bubble. He's getting surgery. I believe he's done.
Yeah, so that's definitely a big blow for them. In Oladipo now, he said he would return. I think he's played in scrimmage games, but who knows if he'll actually play in the regular season, in the restart, now that Sabonis is gone. He's been dealing with injuries this entire season. Hasn't been his 2017 self where he was most improved player, but still definitely a solid piece to this Indiana Pacers team. One thing that could benefit from Sabonis being out, though, is that Turner will get the starting nod, and he could definitely be a great defensive piece looking at a matchup maybe with Bam Adebayo in the Miami Heat. Miles Turner there could fit very well, give him some time to shine because him and Sabonis really weren't working well, especially together in the same lineup. So I thought he might have been relegated to the bench had Sabonis played, but now we know he will not be playing in the restart, which is big for them. And one thing I think that the Pacers should look into doing is starting Justin Holiday, who they signed in the middle of the season. He's been playing surprisingly well for them, shooting above 40% from 3, has a +2 defensive plus-minus. So he's been better on defense than he's ever been in his entire career, been shooting the lights out compared to the rest of his career. I mean, he could be the definition of a wing 3 and D player. We're going against maybe a Miami Heat team who has a plethora of those type of players. someone like a Justin Holiday could add a lot of value to the Indiana Pacers. So I would look, if I'm Nate McMillan, to giving him maybe not starter minutes, but at least 20 minutes a game or so, just more time, because I think he could definitely help lessen the blow of Sabonis and some of the losses that this team's faced. Not to mention Jeremy Lamb is out for the year as well, who was a starter for them.
Yeah, I agree. The injuries for this team have been immense and has really sucked for them because my 3 words embodies that. They're a regular season team. It's just one of those things where the Pacers, they can perform really well in the regular season and then the playoffs roll around and they just haven't been able to capitalize. And I think that will be another case this year. The Sabonis injury hurts a lot. Oladipo, who knows where he stands? He said he wasn't going to play. Now he's like, oh, maybe I will play because he realized he might not get paid if he doesn't play. So he's nearing on the side of playing, but who knows how much of an effect that will have. I think Oladipo is still recovering from that quad injury. I think he should just sit out given the risk of re-injuring himself. And the Pacers, they're in a tight spot because it's very hard for them to get free agents. Sure, they got Malcolm Brogdon, who was a great signing for them, and I don't know why the Bucks didn't try to lock him up for the future. But they're not going to get a top 20 free agent ever unless they re-sign with them. So they got it. The Pacers are in a tight spot. They can't be like, oh, Oladipo, you're sitting out. Is it because we don't want you getting hurt? If Oladipo wants to play, the Pacers got to be like, yes, play, because they want him happy to stay for the long term. That's the issue of the small market team. The Milwaukee Bucks are going to face that issue with Giannis. The Pacers are dealing with Oladipo in a somewhat lesser extent. Maybe they could pull off an upset as the 5 seed. They'll probably drop down to 6. Philadelphia will leapfrog them. And it's just one of those things. They're a regular season team that hasn't been able to form in the playoffs. This year will be yet another example of that. And hopefully next year brings something different.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Indiana. A lot of these teams have benefited from the break in the injury department because they've had time to get back, rehabilitate, and practice with their team. Pacers have had the opposite effect. They've lost players, even given the break, and aren't going to be fully healthy when the rest of these teams, because of the break, are pretty much fully healthy because of it. So it's unfortunate for them. Looking at the 6th seed, we've foreshadowed them quite a bit in this podcast already. Philadelphia 76ers, dark horse contenders. I've been high on this team for a very long time. They definitely had a rough regular season. There's no doubt about it. Their chemistry was not where it was supposed to be. Gave signs of last year's Celtics team. It was just not getting along on the court. Spacing issues galore. Ben Simmons still reluctant to shoot. Brett Brown kind of under a little fire as well. Some of the blame going towards him. So there was definitely some trouble in paradise in the regular season for them. But given this time off, I think it gives them a break from each other. Maybe the Joel and Simmons weren't getting along. This break gives them some time off. Now they go in a bubble where there's no home court or away advantage at all, which was a big part of their season because they won the majority of their games at home, almost lost all their games on the road. Now that there's no fans at all, no home court advantage, even though they won't be playing at home at all technically because they'll be in Orlando, they also won't be on the road. So I think that helps them a lot. And just when you look at this team, they have all the talent in the world. Not to mention Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Al Horford, who they signed in the offseason, Josh Richardson, also a solid piece on that team. And I love the move they made just recently of putting Simmons to the 4. That helps with spacing a lot. They put Al Horford on the bench because now instead of having 3 non-shooters on the team, they have Ben Simmons at the 4. He can continue to be a point forward, the likes of a Giannis or a LeBron, who he runs the offense, dribbles the ball up the court, but doesn't have to be forced to take shots at the point guard position. Instead, they have Shake Milton, who's definitely a shooter for this team, shoots great from behind the arc. They have shooters on the bench like Korkmaz. Horford has been shooting well in scrimmage games so far. I just think the Sixers, this time off was very beneficial for them. And looking at their matchup with the Celtics, it'll be very interesting unless they do leapfrog to the 5th seed. Either way, I'm pretty high on the Celtics, and I definitely think people have been sleeping on them, but at the beginning of the regular season, people thought this would definitely be a finals caliber team. I'm still on that board.
Ryan, I hate to do this to you, but you're wrong. I think the New Hampshire air has done something to your brain because there's no way this can work. Those are my 3 words. This cannot work. I will agree with you. The break has been beneficial for the Sixers on one aspect. Ben Simmons is healthy. He had that back injury late prior to the stoppage, he missed some time. He's now get to recover. But I just don't think this is going to work. Ben Simmons at the 4. Now you get their 2 superstars on the block. It was bad enough when Ben Simmons kept driving to the lane and Embiid was on the block. Now you got them both on the block demanding the ball. I just can't see this working out. The Al Horford experiment has not worked at all. Maybe going to the bench might be beneficial for him, but don't get me wrong. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a 2-time national champion in college, as well as had a lot of success in the NBA. But he should not be starting this team. I think it's smarter Brett Brown to put him on the bench, but I just really don't even know how much of an effect that will have on him. I think he's just done for his career. The guy's played almost 15 years in the NBA. I think his best days are behind him, and he might be reaching the end of his rope, if you will. The thing with Simmons, I think he's overrated, personally. He's a very solid defender, and he's very good in transition, one of the best in the entire NBA. But the guy can't shoot the ball outside of 10 feet, if that. Sure, we've seen it in scrimmages. He had that 1 3-pointer against the Knicks, and everyone lost their minds. But still, until he can do it consistently, I'm going to keep touting the fact that Ben Simmons is overrated, and I don't think this Philadelphia 76ers can exist with both he and Embiid. It'll be interesting to see if the Sixers flop into playoffs, if they get rid of one of them, who do they get rid of? Do they get rid of Embiid, who's been the face of this trust the process, or Simmons, who's probably the better player out of the two? And one other thing, re-signing Tobias Harris, big mistake. It has not worked. They should have signed Jimmy Butler. Harris, he was on the verge of an all-star berth in 2019. This year, he's been relegated to the 3rd star on a team, and I think we've really gotten to see the player he truly is as a guy on a bad team can be really good. On a good team, okay at best. That's just me.
Yeah, I can tell you're on the boat of Tatum over Simmons in that
100%.
Yeah, it made pretty clear in that argument you just made.
Yeah.
Yes, Simmons is at the 4. He'll obviously still be running the offense. We'll be dribbling the ball up the court. We'll be the primary playmaker on this team, even though Shake Milton is playing the point guard position. And I didn't even mention a guy who is pretty good at making YouTube videos, but he's also pretty good at defending the ball. Matisse Thybulle, boy, does he have some great editing skills. But getting to basketball, he is one of the best defenders, young defenders in this league that nobody knows about. You look at his numbers. He's got, I think, a steal and a block a game. He's only playing like less than 20 minutes. You put him on the court with Ben Simmons, who's arguably one of the best defenders in the league. Joel Embiid, another one of the best defensive players in the league. That defensive lineup is just going to be so tough to stop. They have shooters all around them. Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz, Josh Richardson, Al Horford even, Tobias Harris, who isn't playing as well as people would like, as you mentioned. He's overpaid for sure, but he can still shoot the ball. There's no doubt about that. So when you have space, you have Ben Simmons as your playmaker, you have Joel Embiid as your big man in the paint, you have defenders all around. I don't see how this can fail. I'm very high on the Sixers. You're obviously not, but we'll move on. To the Brooklyn Nets at number 7, they're waiting for 2021. Those are my 3 words. It's pretty obvious since their whole team is sitting out virtually. Of course, KD still not going to play, still recovering from the Achilles injury. He was never going to play in the bubble. That was never a factor. Kyrie, he's dealt with injuries throughout the regular season. He's also sat out longer than he had to because he just wants to wait this year out because he knows KD wasn't going to play. They're waiting for next year. This was when they signed them in free agency. Everyone knew it wasn't going to be right away. They'd be one of the top teams in the East because of these injuries, because of the weight they would have to endure. So they will not be playing, which is huge. Not to mention Spencer Dinwiddie, who is their primary scorer this entire season when Kyrie was out. He will not be playing. DeAndre Jordan, their other big free agency signing, part of that like big 3 they signed in the offseason, he won't be playing. Wilson Chandler won't be playing. Torian Prince won't be playing. The list goes on and on. Their majority of their team is not playing. They're sitting it out. They don't really have a shot. They might fall out of the playoffs. We could see the Wizards leapfrog them if they lose the play-in game because they'll most likely drop to the 8th seed with all these players out. It'll be interesting to see Karis LeVert, what he could do with this offense. He's shown some flashes of scoring, scored 50 points in March right before the coronavirus break. So there's something to look forward to, I guess, if you're a Nets fan. But in reality, this season never mattered. It's all about 2021 and they're on after.
Yeah, I'll keep this short because I have pretty much the same points. My 3 words are until next year. obviously Kyrie and KD not playing amongst a bunch of other players. This is just an opportunity to see what Karis LeVert has and what Jared Allen has and maybe some of their other young players. They brought in guys like Jamal Crawford and who was the other guy? I believe they brought in Tyler Johnson as well. But it's 2021 and beyond for this team, which sucks because the Nets, they projected to be really well, be really good this year. Kyrie gets hurt. They fired Kenny Atkinson, which I still don't get why they did. And now I don't see the direction for this team in the future. And honestly, come 2021, I'm not even going to be high on this team. I still don't think they'll be higher than the 4th seed. I don't even think they'll be higher than the 5 seed in 2021 because this team is just – Kyrie Irving has shown that he cannot lead a team. Ever since he went to Boston, his ego got extremely big, and it's carried over now into Brooklyn. And I feel bad for any Nets fans because they had a really good thing going until Kyrie and KD showed up.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not the biggest Kyrie fan. It's obvious he can't lead a team that's been proven in the past. And even this year, he's done some questionable things in the locker room, some statements he's made. Yeah. He's just a little off, even off the court things he's mentioned and talked about, flat earther, all this to try to make his own league. He's not all the way there. He's not a good leader, but he won't have to be because KD's there for that. He's the focal point of this team.
But the burner accounts! Kevin Durant drove that Warriors locker room apart.
That's because also Draymond was a big factor in that. He won't have to deal. There's no voices on the team, on the Nets like Draymond, so there shouldn't be that many issues. The only issue is if KD and Kyrie don't get along, which definitely could happen. They're both extremely unpredictable and volatile. I mean, something could definitely happen, but Town alone, I don't think there's any question they're a top 2 team in the East next year. But moving on to the final playoff spot in the East as of right now, the Orlando Magic. Home court advantage? Technically, it is the Orlando bubble. They're the only team that will be playing in their city that they play in. But for them, a lot of it is defense to look forward to because you have Jonathan Isaac who just came back after being gone the majority of the year. He showed some great defensive potential in the limited time he did play. He's a very tall, long wingspan, can switch on multiple defenders, has multiple steals and blocks per game. Getting him back is very big for this Magic team. Also, Mo Bamba, plus 30 pounds, bulked up. He looks scary. That defensive potential that they talked about in the draft, and which is why he was a top 10 pick, it could come to a fruition if he plays the way he looks, because he looks like a monster paint protector for this Orlando Magic team. He's also dealt with injuries in the past, but this break has given him time to rehab, and he'll be back as well. Also, Markelle Fultz, this is one of his first healthy seasons. He'll be playing as well. So there's some young players on this team that give Magic fans some hope. I mean, looking at their matchup, the Bucks or the Raptors, don't expect them to win more than a game or two, if that. I mean, this is not a team that's going to win right now, but they have some potential moving forward. I like what Steve Clifford's done to their defense, as I've mentioned, with some of their players. I would like for them to get a little smaller, maybe try to trade Vucevic or Gordon. We'll see if they can work that out in the playoffs, see how they play. But if it kind of limits the spacing and it just limits their offense in general, like it has been the majority of the season, if I was a Magic GM, I would look to maybe move some of those pieces, especially with Isaac and Bamba, the bigs, who are very young and looking like they're about to take starting positions. So there's some hope for the Magic in future years, but as of right now, the only thing you really got going for you is that you're playing in your home crowd, technically, even though there's no fans.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Mo Bamba, I honestly didn't even recognize him at first because he up. He was really skinny, almost looking like a stick, basically, like a stick figure. And now he looks somewhat bigger. I think there's still a lot more room to grow. Similar to Giannis. When Giannis was first drafted, he was very raw, very skinny. Mo Bamba's the same way. I don't think he'll become Giannis, but if he continues to bulk up, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the NBA. My 3 words, the Disney effect. Walt Disney World, as you can see, a lot of Disney posters behind me. Walt Disney World is considered the most magical place on earth. Magical place on earth, Orlando Magic. Maybe there's a correlation there. I think maybe they can upset someone because they'll probably jump up to 7 seed, so whoever's the 2 seed, maybe they can pull off an upset. They took one game from the Raptors last year with Kawhi. Who says they can't do it on their home turf, basically, like you mentioned, in Orlando in that bubble? And like you mentioned as well, Jonathan Isaac's coming back. Huge. He was having a breakout year this season before getting hurt. Mamba's getting bigger. Markelle Fultz having his best year of his career. It sucks for what's happened to him so far in his young career. It looks like he's finally figured it out and looking like maybe not the number one overall pick people thought he would, but he's starting to build that up. Vucevic, former All-Star. Aaron Gordon, a high-flying, really solid player. Evan Fournier is a really good scorer. The list goes on and on and on. Their defense is phenomenal, like you mentioned. I think there's an opportunity. Also, there's some winnable games on their schedule. Of their 8 regular season games, they'll play Brooklyn twice, Sacramento, Indiana, New Orleans, all of which can be wins. So watch out for the Magic to make some noise.
Yeah, they could definitely move up to that 7th seed. We could see a rematch between them and the Raptors in the playoffs. Raptors won't have Kawhi this time, so maybe they could get a couple more games on them. We'll see. Looking at the final Eastern Conference bubble team, the Washington Wizards. Who invited you? Really, why is this team here? It's like you're at a party with a bunch of your close friends. You're all hanging out. Then you just see the Washington Wizards pull up, and you're like, who invited that guy? Like, who's
similar to every party I've ever been to.
I mean, hey, you're saying it, not me. But the Wizards, they're in that exact situation. They're kind of a product of the 22 teams being in place instead of 20 teams. The NBA thought they should give them a chance since they're somewhat in the running for the 8th seed, maybe. And with these playoff or play-in games, they do have a shot. Even if they lose out all their regular season games, they'll be the 9th seed either way. So they'll have a chance to fight the Nets or Magic or whoever for that 8th and final playoff spot. The right to get smacked by the Bucks. I get excited for that if you're a Wizards fan or Nets fan or whatever. But like the Nets, they're without some of their best players. Bradley Beal will not be playing. Davis Bertans, their second leading scorer, will also not be playing. John Wall is still not going to suit up for the Washington Wizards. So this team had tons of offense during the regular season. That's the majority of why they got some wins and were in the 9th spot to begin with. Now some of their top scorers are out, so they'll be inept on offense and defense. It's just not going to be fun to watch this team, and I don't even know why they're here.
Yeah, I just kept it simple. Shouldn't be here. I think it's time for the Wizards to admit that this has not worked. They owe Bradley Beal a boatload of money. I think they got to just get rid of him, get rid of John Wall, start from scratch. This will be a nice opportunity to see what their young guys like Rui Hachimura can do. He's going to be the future of this team. So if they get rid of Wall and Beal, they can start getting some high draft picks and start this process over and maybe be a competitor towards the end of the decade of the 2020s. But they really shouldn't be here. Maybe they'll sneak into the playoffs, but that's more so of a byproduct of the Nets not having any players, basically.
Yeah, definitely for sure. That's all the Eastern Conference teams. Now we move on to the West, which has
13 in all.
13. Almost every team in the Western Conference will be joining the Orlando bubble, starting with the 1st seed, Los Angeles Lakers, who had a great regular season, still somewhat title favorites besides Avery Bradley sitting out for personal reasons, Rondo getting hurt. And my 3 words for them, for the Mamba. This has been, for what it's worth, one of the most memorable seasons in Laker history.
Yep.
With the trade of their whole young core for Anthony Davis to start, build the hype of him and LeBron, maybe pushing for LeBron's final chance at a title or one of 2, however it works out. This is the final stretch for LeBron James. Then you have guys like Dwight Howard coming back to the team and playing great for them. Then you have JR and Dion Waiters, who they're coming on the team now to fill in for Avery Bradley and Rondo, who won't be playing. So a lot of new faces on this team. And, of course, the death of Kobe Bryant, huge for the Lakers, very emotional for them. This is such an important season for the Lakers, not only with the Mambas passing, but with their title hopes being so very high. They've been awful for the majority of the 2010s after they won the title in 2010. They really haven't been good since. This is the first time they've made the playoffs or are going to make the playoffs in 5 or so years.
Since 2013, since they had Dwight Howard on the roster.
Yes. So maybe Dwight.
The first time.
Yeah. So this has been so much going on in Laker Town, but they still have their eyes on the title, and they have a very good chance to do so because they have one of the greatest players of all time on their roster in LeBron James. It's definitely an odd year, an odd season. but it'd be very sweet if they wrapped it all up with a win and dedicated it to one of their best players in franchise history.
Not one of their best players, their best player in franchise history,
Or you
without
agree?
question. No, 100%. We could talk about this on a later date. I can go off, as a Laker fan, I can go off on how this is a season of destiny and LeBron James can cement his legacy and all that. But I'm going to be a realist here. My 3 words, point guard depth. You mentioned the injury to Rondo. He probably won't come back until the Western Conference semifinals at the earliest. And then Avery Bradley's not there. So what does that leave you? Obviously, LeBron will probably fill in the role as point guard, and he's got tremendous basketball IQ. But Rondo, he has been touted as having similar, if not better, basketball IQ than that of LeBron. So you lose that for your second unit. So who does that leave? Most likely in the starting lineup, it will be JaVale McGee, Anthony Davis, Danny Green, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and LeBron James going from center to point guard. So on the bench, you have Dion Waiters, J.R. Smith. I really don't trust either of those guys. J.R. Smith's been out of basketball forever, and Dion Waiters, I don't know what he showed up well in the scrimmages, but I don't know what he can do, given the fact that marijuana's allowed in the bubble. He might take advantage of that, if you remember his final couple of days in Miami. Alex Caruso.
JR definitely will too. Both their signings. That's
a little worrisome for me. Alex Caruso, okay, he's emerged into a nice young player, but can he handle the minutes as a legitimate backup point guard? Who knows? And then Quinn Cook, who hasn't played much all season long. The Lakers, they probably should have tried to sign a backup point guard during this free agency period where they were able to sign guys. I mean, guys like Jamal Crawford got signed. They could have brought out Darren Collison for a playoff run. Who knows? There were some other notable free agents that could have been signed by the Lakers, and they just simply did not. So it's really going to come on. It's going to be on LeBron's shoulders to perform. But you got guys, Dion Waiters, J.R. Smith, Caruso. All 3 of them will have to show up for the Lakers to have a legitimate chance of making it to the finals and winning. If they can just hold down the fort until Rondo gets back, and who knows how much game shape he'll be in once he gets back, it's going to be tougher for the Lakers than I think they initially projected.
I think the Rondo loss is a little overblown than some people might be saying. Obviously, the main problem is when LeBron goes to the bench, the team kind of plummets. I think JR and Dion Waiters were very good for that reason, their signing, because they're scoring off the bench. Correct. When LeBron goes to the bench, you just need to score some points to keep them afloat so LeBron can come back in and dominate. Of course, Rondo won't be there for at least the first round, but they're almost guaranteed to make the second round, so we'll see Rondo again. Sure, he might not be playing that much. Then again, doesn't shoot that well. He's not the same as he once was. How much time do you really want him playing? Caruso,
playoff Rondo, though.
Playoff Rondo is definitely different for sure. Yeah. So it is important that he's not there, but I think they'll easily make the Western Conference Finals, and by then he should be back in the flow of things, at least to some degree. I really like Alex Caruso's play. Sneaky good defender. He could lead some of the playmaking and offense while LeBron's on the bench. So I wouldn't panic too much. I think it's still about their biggest challenge is the Clippers, who are next on this list.
Yep.
And for them, little brother's chance, because they've been the little brother in LA forever, pretty much. This is their chance. This is their year to finally bring a chip to the Clippers instead of the Lakers. And the reason for this is because unlike the Lakers, they don't have many people who are going to be missing time. They have quite a few people who've left the bubble, actually. You have Montrezl Harrell, you have Patrick Beverley, and Lou Williams, who have all left for their own reasons. Some are returning back, some aren't yet, but nonetheless, by playoff time, they should all be back. None of them are injury-related, though, which is good news for the Clippers. Then you have some of the signings they made. Joakim Noah has played decent in scrimmages. Reggie Jackson as well. Marcus Morris, they got at the trade deadline. Not to mention Kawhi Leonard, who went on a playoff-dominant run last year and proved he could be arguably the best player in the league. Then you have Paul George as well, who this team is built to stop LeBron with those two switchable defenders who could score as well. Just make LeBron's life hell. That's what they're made to do. This team is full of defenders, defense first. They can also space as well. Have a very deep bench. Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, both 6 Men of the Year candidates coming off the bench for them. This squad is deep. It's made to beat the Lakers. It could very well beat the Lakers this year. They're built to win now. They could very well win now with all the stuff that's been happened to the Lakers with Mom's passing and their injury concerns and all the attention that's been forced on them. the Clippers going to come out and top the Lakers. This is their season to shine. Little brother might have a chance to dethrone the big, mighty Los Angeles Lakers.
The little brother might have a chance, but then again, every team has a chance. I don't think it's going to happen. The Lakers are going to make it. LeBron James cements his legacy. But talk about the Clippers. He wanted wings. Last in reference to Lou Williams going to Magic City, a gentleman's club, to keep it professional, to get some hot wings. And he wouldn't have gotten caught if he wasn't wearing the NBA issued mask that they gave him in Orlando. I'm gonna be smart about that, Lou. But he's not going to be back for the NBA's restart. He's in the midst of his 10-day quarantine, although originally granted 4. It's been changed to 10. Landry Shamet, I don't think is in the bubble yet. Patrick Beverly, Montrezl Harrell, I don't know what their status is for the first game. I don't know if either are going to play. So that's an issue there. And sure, the Clippers performed really well against the Lakers this season. The Lakers ranked 7th in points per game this past season, up prior to the shutdown with 114. In the 3 games, the Lakers have scored 102, 106, and 112. So less than their average. The Clippers have done well on that end, playing really solid defense. That's what their identity is. But if the Lakers get a little banged up in the 8 regular season games in the playoffs, the Clippers' depth might be a big thing for them. But that's the thing. The Clippers, they could be 14 deep, but who knows what the status of Kawhi is. Sure, he's had all the load management time he's needed during this break, but I don't know how that stands. Paul George, he's been up and down all year. I do think he's going to break out during this bubble, but I'm not 100% confident on that. And the other thing is, the Clippers' main core, they've barely played with each other all year. Chemistry is huge. Sure, they've had a lot of practice, but in a game, that means a lot more, that chemistry, than it does on the practice court. That's a big storyline that I don't think enough people are talking about. The Clippers' chemistry with guys like Harrell, Kawhi, George, Beverly, Lou Will, et cetera, and that could be the ultimate thing that does them in, that lack of cohesion and playing together for this entire season.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was my biggest flaw on them before the NBA shutdown. I didn't think because of Kawhi's load management, because Paul George's missing time, other people missing time with injury, their whole starting roster and their best players barely played together.
Yeah.
But now there's been such a big gap for every single team. Every team's gone through the same thing. Now they're living in a bubble together. They see each other every single day. It's they're all healthy, so no one's, unless they get injured again, no one's going to miss time. They all can play together and build a rapport in these scrimmage games, in these first 8 games of the regular season, even in the playoffs when it should have to go full steam ahead, but they won't have to worry as much if they get later into the playoffs. So if they could build some chemistry in those earlier games and maybe in the first round of the playoffs, then I think that solves one of their biggest issues, and then they're really scary come Western Conference playoff time if they do face the Lakers by then. If they're healthy, they have a chemistry by then, they have all their players back, their whole deep roster built up with tons of defenders. It's going to be a very tough matchup for both teams, but I think, if anything, this break helped the Clippers in that respect and one of their biggest glaring weaknesses. Moving to the 3rd seed, the Denver Nuggets, Trees and Slim Joker. Those are some – I don't know if you saw one of the scrimmage games, their lineups.
Oh,
they were tall. They had Bol, Jokic, Jeremy Grant, Miles Plumlee, and
Mason Plumlee.
Sorry, Mason.
Wrong Plumlee. There's a lot of them, I know.
There were 3 of them, so I think they all start with M2. And one of them was in the Knicks. He was awful. But Mason Plumlee and Paul Millsap was their starting lineup. Obviously, that's not going to be a regular starting lineup for them. But just the thought of that, how big their team is, how big guys like Jokic and Plumlee can still handle the ball and play make a little bit, how Bol has come out and his potential is shining right away. He's looking like a unicorn out there, shooting, blocking shots, dribbling down the court, and shooting a pull-up 3 in defender's face all in the same play. He's been doing it all in these scrimmage games. The top 10 player people thought he'd be before he dropped all the way to 42 in this year's draft. And looking at the Nuggets, I don't think this is the year for them. Obviously, Jokic is a superstar, and they have a bunch of nice pieces there. But I think they have a bunch of diamonds in the rough who they haven't gotten enough playing time yet. Of course, I just mentioned Bol, but also Michael Porter Jr., who they really haven't given a lot of playing time to, who I think should be a starter come next year to really be ingrained into this offense because he has unreal shot creation abilities.
Yeah, saw it in high school.
Similar to someone like a Jason Tatum, who's kind of exploded in that respect, had the potential, didn't really get the ball that much with the Celtics till this year. You see what he's done with it. Porter, coming out of high school, like you said, and out of college, he was a top 5 pick as well, just like Bull. Was very highly touted, highly recruited, was thought to be a sure lottery pick. He fell as well. The Nuggets got back-to-back years with big steals, and I think if they could get some more playing time in the bubble, get some playoff experience, I don't think they'll beat the Lakers or the Clippers or any of these powerhouses in the West. I don't think they're built for that just yet. But in a year or two from now, with all this young talent they have, I think they could be very, very scary and a serious playoff contender in as soon as a year from now. But given their current roster, not that high on them just yet. I really do like the idea of having all those tall guys in the lineup, especially when you look at them in the 3 seed, and then you look at the 6 seed. You got small ball Houston Rockets. Imagine that lineup.
Should be interesting.
Tucker, no matter who you put him on, he's going to be 3 inches smaller than any of the guys he's defending. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how big the small ball is in that instance. But, yeah, there's some stuff to look forward to with the Nuggets. Joker, who looks slim, fit, and ready to go in the bubble, looks like a totally different person. He's played well in playoff experience in the past, given the Portland Trailblazers series last year. Sure, they didn't win that, went to 7 games, but Jokic played great in that. No matter how you look at it, he played great. So I think it would be interesting to see, can he do the same this year? How far can he take them, given how young this team is and how they're not superstar heavy like some of the other teams in the West? But they're definitely a team to keep note of, especially in future years. Watch for Bol, Michael Porter Jr., etc.
Yeah, that was a lot there, but I couldn't agree more. Bol has excited in the scrimmages thus far. You said 42nd. I believe he was the 44th overall pick. Not to correct you there, but we got to keep it factual, I guess. I don't know. But, yeah, a lot of teams passed on him. Some teams passed on him multiple times, and they might be paying for the price as evidenced by how he plays in the bubble. My 3 words for the Denver Nuggets, all on Jokic. Nikola Jokic, he's one of the best players in the league by far. As you mentioned, he's slimmed down. He looks good. He looks healthier. Maybe that helps him live a longer and healthier life. But one of the things that made him so great was his size. The fact that for a guy as large as he was, both vertically and horizontally, could head off defenders and make plays. He was just like, guys would just be shaking off of him. Jokic it was just indescribable how he plays at the way he was playing at prior to the shutdown. Also, Jokic tested positive for COVID-19 while in Serbia, and I think that might, like I mentioned earlier with Eric Bledsoe, the respiratory issues could come back for Jokic. That could limit his role for the Nuggets, or at least how he wants to play for this team. And also the fact that a lot of the guards on that roster didn't make it to the bubble until this past week. That could be another issue for them, guys like Jamal Murray and Gary Harris, where it might be a little bit of rust. So the Nuggets could start slow, drop down in the standings a little bit, and get an unfavorable matchup. But right now, if they play the Rockets with all their current length, that will be a fun series to watch.
Yeah, and I think the Nuggets would definitely be in favor of that, given their size. And though Jokic does look slimmer, I don't think that'll affect them that much. One of the biggest negatives on him is that he was so slow, and he kind of slowed down the pace of an offense.
That's true.
Help with that aspect. I think he'll be more of a fluid offensive player now that he's thinner, maybe down in the low post. He won't use his size as much, but maybe he'll have more, energy and fluidity when he's moving down there and making shots for himself. But moving on to the Jazz at the 4th
One more point on Jokic. Similar to Bryson DeChambeau of golf, as I'm wearing my PGA Championship shirt. The guy bulked up immensely, and we've seen how that has changed the game in golf. Maybe this will be the same for Jokic, where he slims down. Maybe that might be a trend, where guys slim down a little bit more, shed off some of that excess weight. But continue.
Absolutely. Moving on to the Jazz. Hasn't been too sweet for them. They're the Utah Blues, as I would say, given all that's happened since the middle of March. Of course, Gobert is the reason it shut down. Some player would have gotten it eventually. Don't blame it all on Gobert, but he is the first player who got it. He led to the shutdown. He's part of the reason that they haven't played since March. And, of course, there was some disputes between him and Donovan Mitchell, some teammate chemistry issues. Because of that reason, he gave it to Mitchell and some other players in the locker room. But hopefully they've gotten that settled. But That along with them losing Boban. What am I trying to say?
Bogdanovich. Bojan
Bogdanovic.
Bogdanovich.
I
Yeah.
was like, it's not Marjanovic. It's
No,
Bojan Bogdan. Yeah, no.
there's
All
too
right.
many Bogans and
I know,
Boyans and
the Kings have one. The Mavericks have one.
yeah.
Bojan Bogdanovic being out hurts a lot. He scored 20 points a game for them. Great shooter for them. They're still a good defensive team. He hurts the spacing and the shot creation because now a lot of the pressure is on Donovan Mitchell. They did have Jordan Clarkson as a signing, which could help them off the bench. But I just don't know where this Utah Jazz team is going. I think they might fall. The fourth seed seems pretty high for them. I'm not very high on them. Mike Conley's been pretty disappointing. I'm just not very high on the Jazz right now. That's why I have them at lose.
Yeah, I wouldn't be buying a lot of stock in this team either, especially given the fact that their playoff matchups could be any one of the Thunder, the Nuggets, or the Rockets, or even Dallas. I don't see the Jazz winning any of those games. My 3 words for them: how's their chemistry? I mean, I get it that the Jazz head coach Quinn Snyder, Gobert, Donovan Mitchell have all said that our chemistry is fine. What happened happened. We are focused on the championship. But obviously, Gobert, according to reports, was very careless when it came to COVID-19. There was that video that came out of him touching all the reporters' microphones, and obviously he ended up getting it, as well as giving the virus to his teammate Donovan Mitchell. And you don't think it's in the back of Donovan Mitchell's mind that he could have been one of the 137,000 plus people that could have died from COVID-19, all because his teammate didn't take the simple precautions as people were telling him and was acting carelessly? That could bode very poorly for this team. The Bogdanovich loss is huge, but that chemistry between the Jazz's 2 biggest superstars in Mitchell and Gobert could spell trouble, could lead to them exiting early and forcing that front office to probably get rid of most likely Gobert, as Mitchell's their superstar and the future of this franchise. I wouldn't be surprised if Gobert is on a different roster by the end of this offseason.
Yeah, he's definitely been critical for them. Their whole defensive makeup revolves around him. He gets rebounds. He shoots efficiently inside of the paint. So he's a great player, but that can mean some great trade bait, getting some stuff back for him, especially if they have a first-round exit. Him and Mitchell did not get anything resolved at all. It's still problematic there. I could definitely see some pieces being moved in Utah. Moving to the Thunder, who would have thought?
Yeah.
First of all, the whole year is who would have thought. No one would know how any of this would play out. All the stuff that's happened this year is unpredictable. But the Oklahoma City Thunder being a 6th seed in the Western Conference playoffs, who would have thought about that? That's just unreal. CP3 has reminded us all that he is still a surefire Hall of Fame point guard, and he is playing like one right now. Some people think he should be in MVP talks the way he's just turned his team around and played so efficiently and been a great leader, has helped Gilgeous Alexander play so much better. Even Dennis Schroeder's played a lot better with the emergence of CP3. And it could have hurt Westbrook's reputation a lot because with Westbrook, they couldn't get past the first round with this team. He didn't make the players around him better. He was more selfish with it, as people would say, kind of a stat pattern type of player. CP3 is the exact opposite. He's uplifting everyone on this team. It's almost the same roster as last year, minus, of course, Westbrook and Paul George. But if CP3 could then, given his past falls in the playoffs, if he can maybe get past the first round with this team, given that Westbrook couldn't, and with Paul George, and in past years, even with Melo, they couldn't do that. If CP3 can all on his own, that would say a lot about CP3 as well as Westbrook and even Paul George a little bit.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The Thunder have been the team this season, the unexpected team. You can argue Miami, you can argue Toronto, but I think it has to go to the Thunder. Because a lot of people thought Chris Paul, he wouldn't make it past February. He'd be traded by then. He stayed, and he's shown that he's still one of the top players in the entire league. My 3 words for them is simple. Don't underestimate them. They've been doing that all year. You just give them more fire in that locker room, more chalkboard material, if whoever uses a chalkboard anymore. Billy Donovan has coached his team immensely well. Paul has served as a mentor for Dennis Schroeder and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like you mentioned. And Schroeder, probably 6th man of the year, at least the 2nd place in that award. He is up for the running. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he probably could be an all-star. I'd say by 2023, he will be an all-star.
I'd say by even next year.
I think it's possible.
It's tough in the West.
That's why I think 2023.
On track for sure.
Yeah, and Paul is a huge reason for that. I think the one knock on his career is that he hasn't been able to get it done really in the playoffs. He's had opportunities, it just really hasn't happened. I don't think this is going to be a year where they win the championship by any stretch, but this could be an opportunity where maybe the Thunder play well and a free agent wants to get traded to the Thunder because they got all those draft picks, or a free agent wants to sign there. Who knows? The Thunder could benefit immensely from this. The one issue for them is their seeding. Right now, they're tied for Houston for 5th in the West, so they'll probably be somewhere in that 5-6 range. But they're a game and a half back of 3rd, so they could jump all the way up to the 3 seed in Denver. Who knows? But they're also a game and a half ahead of Dallas, who's 7. So the fact that they're somewhere between 3 and 7, that's a big disparity in matchups. I think they'll want to be somewhere between the 3 and 5 range if they want to make it past the first round. Because let's be real, they drop down to 7, they ain't beating LA. But they'll make it a tough matchup, don't get me wrong. But if they want to make some noise, they want to be somewhere in that 3 to 5 range. If they make it to 3, watch out. They could get some momentum, winning a first-round playoff series against probably a tough Rockets, Jazz, Nuggets team. And then they go on to take the Clippers. I think the Thunder are more likely to beat the Clippers in the second round than they are in the first round.
I don't think the Thunder are ever going to beat the Clippers.
I don't think they are either, but it's more likely, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure, why not?
That was worded weird.
You say. Looking at the 6th seed, the Houston Rockets, maybe too small. I mean, of course, small ball lineup swept the nation when they traded Clint Capella to the Hawks, got Robert Covington in return. He's been great in a 3-team deal. He didn't get it from the Hawks, but nonetheless, their lineup is small. They have P.J. Tucker at their center position.
The sneaker
and it worked. Yes, he still managed to bring
90 pairs of sneakers, I think it was.
Bubble, which is a little unnecessary, but hey, you do you, PJ Tucker.
Yeah.
But just looking at the team, it swept the nation for a little bit. I mean, they were looking unstoppable for a good stretch, but I think teams started to catch up to them towards the end of March before the break. And they've had this whole time off to kind of figure out the small ball lineup. And looking at a team maybe in the Nuggets that they might have to face where it's huge big guys, or even if they face the Thunder and they have to worry about Steven Adams getting every single board, I mean, it's going to be a real challenge for them. Also, Russ and Harden are definitely one of the more talented offensive players and offensive duos in the league for sure, but they both have not had pretty playoff pass in the past.
Yep.
The Rockets in general have not shot well in the playoffs. And with a team that's full of shooters, if they can't get it going, they have no one to rebound the ball because everyone's 6'6" and below, and they might be facing teams with very good rebounders. So if they're not on the mark with their shots, it could be a first-round exit for them. They're somewhere in between a first-round exit and possibly a trip to the finals. They're that unpredictable. I'm leaning towards a first-round exit. I'm not very high on this team. I think in playoffs you need tough defense, rebounding, second-chance points, all that type of stuff. Not exactly the Rockets' forte, and given their past obsession with just shooting the lights out of everything, it's not gone well in the past. I don't really see it going much better this year.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher on the Rockets than you are, just given your thoughts. I think it all depends on the seeding for them. But for me, and you kind of mentioned it, Russell Westbrook's impact. What's that going to be? Another guy who tested positive for COVID-19, and that was fairly recently. He's in the bubble now, but who knows what his impact is going to be, because prior to the All-Star break, up until the shutdown, he has played phenomenally. He started off slow. It didn't look like that he and Harden could coexist. And then they got rid of Clint Capella, and they realized that, hey, playing Westbrook as our primary ball handler and having Harden being as good of a shooter as he is, play more off-ball, it's worked out really well for them. They did enter a little bit of a slump prior to the shutdown. But if this team starts to click, and Westbrook plays well and carries this offense, they could definitely make it to as far as the Western Conference Finals, depending on their matchups. I think the thing with these two guys, Westbrook and Harden, is their egos. They can't let one get bigger than the other. They got to be more by the team. Because like you mentioned, neither of them have had great playoff records by any stretch. And their legacies are on the line, maybe not this year, but in the grand scheme of things, yes, this year. Where if they get bounced early once again, I will have a hard time believing that they will ever make it to an NBA Finals and win. Sure, they made it with Oklahoma City, but that was when they were much younger. They had Kevin Durant on that team. A lot of things have changed since 2012. The Thunder, the Rockets right here and now, they have a big opportunity to make some noise And I think Russell Westbrook will be the key to them making that noise, not James Harden.
Yeah, and they're really running out of time here. That's why they're
Yep.
kind of making desperation moves. They tried to get Jimmy Butler in trade talks during the offseason. They end up trading away Clint Capella, just trying to make move after move, just find some way to get this team over the top. Mike D'Antoni's been on the hot seat. He might be done after this year, especially if they don't perform well in the playoffs. They're just getting really desperate for a title. They had very good chances in the past with those Warriors teams. They kind of blew it, were nowhere to be found in big moments, missed every shot that could be. And it's just they're running out of time, as I said, and I don't know if this is the team dynamic that's going to work for them, but we'll see. Looking at the 7th seed, the Dallas Mavericks, this is only the beginning. I mean, don't expect them to get farther than the first round this year unless they do move up in the seedings and have an easier matchup. Because right now they're slated to be versus one of the LA teams. That's not going to go well for them, even with Doncic being one of the top players in the league already. It's going to be interesting to see how he performs in a playoff atmosphere. This is going to be the first time we see him in the playoffs. Probably, I think they might have locked in a playoff seed already.
They're close. I think they're on the fringe.
They'll make it into the playoffs either way. So it'll be interesting to see how Doncic – now we know he can perform well in the regular season, but how about the playoffs? Because his play style is very similar to a James Harden with his step backs and his offense, not doing much on the defensive side and just scoring heavily in that aspect. He has a lot of resemblance to James Harden, and we've just discussed how he hasn't been great in playoffs in past years. So it'll be interesting to see, can Doncic take it a step up? Will he try harder, show more effort on defense? Will teams start to double team him and mess up the flow of the Dallas offense? Because there's not much depth on this team, especially with Dwight Powell's injury. You still have Kristaps Porzingis, obviously. He's dealt with injuries, though. They haven't had much playing time together. They've been good when they played together, but it's just when you look at the rest of this team, there's not that many big names that could really help them, especially when they're versing an LA team. So don't expect much from him this year, but just look at Doncic, see how he adapts to a not normal playoff atmosphere, but a playoff one nonetheless. Playoff games will be played. So it'll just be interesting to look at that point because Doncic, this is just the first playoff appearance he's going to make of many in his career.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. For me, the question is Luka legit? He's shown in this regular season that he is a top player and is probably going to be the face of the NBA once Giannis gets a little older and LeBron retires. But the Mavericks have a great opportunity. They're a game and a half out of 5th, and they're 4 games back of 3rd in the Western Conference. If Luka starts off slow and the Mavericks suffer, they will be forced to probably play one of these LA teams in the first round and miss out on a great opportunity to get some nice experience for Luka and KP to advance forward in the playoffs. Obviously, it'd be a lot harder for them to advance against the Lakers and the Clippers. That's why I think playing someone like a Utah, someone like an Oklahoma City, a Houston, or a Denver, it increases their odds immensely of at least advancing one round, which would be huge for the development of this team. And by the way, you forgot to mention, the Mavericks also have Tim Hardaway Jr., who they gave up in the Kristaps Porzingis trade. I remember when they traded KP, you were not happy that they gave up Kristaps Porzingis, and even less happier when they gave up Tim Hardaway Jr. in addition. So,
yeah, because already a low blow they gave up Kristaps, and they had to give up one of my other favorite players. Because also that was the second stint with the Knicks too. Like I remember first time really watching the Knicks for real. I think that was his rookie year. Then I liked his play. Then he left with the Hawks. Then we signed him on a big contract, and I was happy he was back. And then just like that, he's gone again. And I'm like, dang, why'd you have to do Tim Hardaway like that? I liked him, but
yeah, wrapping up the Mavericks, I think Luka Doncic has a great opportunity for his team and for him personally to show that he is a top 10 player in the NBA in only his second season. He's just got to take that opportunity and run with it. Hopefully he will, in my opinion. Hopefully he will, because I want to see him thrive in the NBA and in the playoffs and be around there for many, many seasons to come. But if he starts off slow, the Mavericks are going to suffer immensely.
Yeah, and when you think about it, he has won championships in Europe. He's done well in the playoffs out there. So I don't think he's a schmuck in the playoffs.
But he's never had a giant layoff like this.
Yeah, it's definitely different. So just don't put too much – I just don't want all the hate to come on Doncic.
That's true.
When the Mavericks most likely lose in the first round. Everyone's like, oh, he's all regular season stats, like just like how they do to James Harden. I mean, he's kind of deserved it in a way. I still don't like the Harden slander because I think he's one of the best offensive players ever. But at the same time, Doncic is so young. If he has just one bad playoff, or I really just don't want like a flow of haters to try to ruin his reputation. But looking at another young team who has a lot of playoff appearances on their horizon, the Memphis Grizzlies, another bit of a surprising team. This is the grit and grind 2.0. I see a lot of resemblance between them and their old teams that had very good success in the playoffs. You have Ja playing the role of Mike Conley, but at an almost elite level already. I mean, he's definitely the rookie of the year, in my opinion. He's one of my favorite players now. Obviously, Damian Lillard is my favorite player, but Ja might be testing him for my favorite player. I love how this kid plays. The leadership he has at such a young age. He plays so explosively. He wants to dunk on every and anybody he sees, even if he's not successful with it. That's not going to stop him. He's just so bouncy, hard to stop. It's great handles, great playmaking as well. I love his play, and he's the reason why they're the 8th seed right now, even though they do have other great places like Jaren Jackson Jr., kind of plays the role of a Marc Gasol or a Zach Randolph, and is that forward who's a very good defender. Needs to work on rebounding a little bit and stay out of foul trouble. But I think as he's still young as well. They're 21, 22 respectively, I believe. They're very young. They have time to grow. I like the way they play in their future horizons. And also another player they drafted actually this year, along with John Morant, is Brandon Clark, who's been secretly one of the most efficient players in the league, shooting crazy amounts from even three-point land. He's been shooting efficiently. He almost makes every shot he makes in the paint. He's a good defender, good rebounder, explosive as well, just like Ja. That's this team. They play hard, they're explosive, and they're efficient. It's just hard to lose when you have all those elements in your game. And they just remind me a lot of the Grizzlies of years past that were successful in the playoffs. And what you need to have in playoff games is grit and grind. You need to play with grit, with determination, play for each other, all that good stuff. And I think the Memphis Grizzlies have that. And it's the reason why they're 3.5 games above all the other teams that trail them and will most likely be in a play-in game when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I agree. The Grizzlies, they have the toughest schedule entering this final stretch of the season prior to the shutdown. So it only makes sense that they will be playing in a play-in game between either New Orleans or Portland, most likely. Maybe Sacramento, but who knows. For me, this is simple. It's on Josh's shoulders. He's had a remarkable rookie year. Probably will most likely win Rookie of the Year this season. Obviously, thanks to Zion Williamson missing the majority of the season, only playing 19 games thus far. He has benefited from that, and he's taken this step above. He's shown that he was worth the second overall pick. There were some questions, maybe some people thinking, do we go RJ Barrett? Do we go Ja Morant? Memphis went Ja Morant. They put their chips on him, and it worked. They currently hold the 8th seed, like you mentioned, 3.5 games ahead of Portland, Sacramento, and New Orleans. Not in that order. I think it's Portland, New Orleans, and then Sacramento, 9 through 11. It won't be easy for them to hold that spot because those teams are hungry and they want it badly. And they will have a tough schedule. They play Utah, Oklahoma City, Portland, San Antonio, New Orleans, Toronto, Boston, and Milwaukee. Those are some tough games right there. But I do think Ja Morant, given how good of a player he's already shown to be, he's going to seize his opportunity and cement himself as the Rookie of the Year for 2020. And probably he'll be fighting hard with Zion for the best player of this draft class for the next decade to come. And like you mentioned, they got some nice pieces. Brandon Clark, I'm glad you mentioned him because he has performed really well as a rookie this year. Jaren Jackson Jr. continues to make strides in his now second season after being drafted ahead of Luka Doncic. Imagine if they went Luka Doncic, the Grizzlies, fourth. They took Jackson fourth overall, right? Third?
Yeah. Luka was ahead of Jaren.
Okay, so neither here nor there.
Passed on.
Right. So, but imagine if Luka Doncic fell to the Grizzlies, they would have had him and Ja Morant most likely. That would have been fun. Oh well.
Crazy.
Can't live in the past. But the Grizzlies, they have a great opportunity here. Ja Morant, this team will go as far as he takes them. And I think he can take them at least to the playoffs. And for many for a lot more success in the decade of the 2020s. I'm getting a little tired here. I should probably brought down a glass of water.
We've been talking a lot. If you get
Yes.
But yeah, John Morant, definitely a budding superstar, as well as Zion Williamson. And New Orleans Pelicans, who my 3 words for them are first seed beware. Because I see this team right now, they sit, I think, tied with Portland, just us like 3.5 games, 4 games.
They currently
back.
hold the 10 seed.
So the 10th seed, I think, are they tied with Portland with 9? Are they a half game back?
I think how it is they're both 3.5 games back, but Portland has an advantage in terms of record.
So I believe the Pelicans will be in the play-in game, whether they get up to that 8th seed or or jump to the 9th seed. I'm very high on this team. Obviously, Zion's back. He came back yesterday after leaving the bubble, so he'll be all set for tomorrow's opening day game. He's in shape too. We mentioned Jokic slimmed down, got fit. Zion, people were calling him chubby, eating too much gumbo in New Orleans. He don't look like that no more. He looked
gumbo in New Orleans is good.
Scary.
By the way.
It is good, but he turned that into some lean, hard muscle. If he wasn't big and scary enough as is, Zion just got even more intimidating. And they have one of the best starting lineups in the league, just period. With the talent they have, with Zion, with Brandon Ingram, who made his first All-Star game and played so good for this Pelicans team and kept them above treading water so they could have a chance to fight for a playoff spot. Drew Holiday, amazing defender, great playmaker, a veteran, a very good presence on this team. Lonzo Ball, who him and Zion clicked like that. I mean, everyone saw it coming, but it took literally a game. Like their chemistry is through the roof already. They know each other. They know when Zion's going to cut. Zion can throw beautiful lobs over everybody's heads, connected perfectly. Should be hard to stop them. I see a Lob City 2.0 in their futures possibly, especially
100%.
with guys like Jackson Hayes playing the role of a DeAndre Jordan, Zion playing the role of a Blake Griffin, Lonzo, CP3, you get it. I like that team a lot. That will be very entertaining to watch. And it's not going to be a year or two from now. This year they could get in the playoffs. They could give whatever LA team's in first some fits. I don't think they obviously probably won't beat them, but they'll give them fits for sure. It will not be an easy sweep first game series like maybe the Eastern Conference we'll see with the Bucks. The Lakers or the Clippers are going to have a tough matchup from the first round beyond if they have to face the Pelicans at the 8th seed. And just their whole starting lineup is one of the best lineups in the league, as I said, and they're a very good team to watch for.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. My 3 words for them, please get 8th. Please, for us fans, we want to see this. I think outside of Portland, any of the teams fighting for the 8th seed will beat the Lakers, because I'm assuming they'll be the 1 seed. Portland has the talent to do so. I don't think they will, but they have the best odds. But let's be real. The matchup we all want to see is Lakers-Pelicans. First off, you got the Pelicans' young guys in Hart, Ingram, and Lonzo. They'd be playing against their old team who traded them away for Anthony Davis, who wanted to get out of New Orleans. So you got that matchup right there. And then you got some guy named LeBron James, who is the king of basketball for the last decade and a half, and Zion Williamson, who looks to be the king of the NBA for the next decade going forward. So that is a great matchup right there. And they got some really, like you mentioned, some really nice pieces. Drew Holiday, sneaky good vet, one of the best defenders in basketball. J.J. Redick, knockdown three-point shooter. Josh Hart, he's performed well this season on a bench role. Derek Favors, he's performing really well. He knows his role outside he's not going to be a lockdown straight-up shooter, lockdown defender by any means. He gets the rebounds and gets the ball to their playmakers. Lonzo, obviously, he's emerged as a great passer. Brandon Ingram, an all-star. Nico Melli as a rookie, three-point shooting machine. And then, obviously, it ends with Zion. The road for them for the postseason is arguably the easiest for the Pelicans to get there. They play Utah, Clippers, Memphis, Sacramento twice, Washington, San Antonio, and Orlando. Do I think they make the playoffs? No. I think Memphis has a good enough lead where even if they do have to play in a play-in series, Memphis only's got to win once. So I think that plays in their favor. But, boy, would I love it to happen where New Orleans sneaks in there and takes on the Lakers in the first round.
Yeah, by the tone of our voices, I think we can both agree. We kind of want to see New Orleans Pelicans at that 8th seed. But when you look at the Portland Trailblazers, who are ahead of them, or tied with them games back we just discussed, they're right where the Pelicans are. My 3 words for them are worth the wait, because unlike the Pacers, this time off helped a lot with the injuries they dealt with this entire season, which is why they weren't in the playoffs to begin with. Struggled all regular season because Nurkic was out for the entire year still, which is a big blow to this team because him and Dame play so well together, and they just had very limited time since they traded for Nurkic a couple years ago. Zach Collins, who was a big force for them in the playoffs last year, was out since October. He'll be back as well. So 2 big guys making a big presence for the Trailblazers. Another slim down man, Melo, skinny Melo is a thing now. He looks great as
Hoodie
well.
Melo was the thing too. We saw how that went.
Yeah, I mean, any Melo is a great Melo in my opinion. I love Melo. He has a certain place in my heart. But given that all these guys are back, they look healthy and ready to go. Now they can move Whiteside to the bench, where I think he would fit a lot better as a defensive rim protector off the bench, get rebounds, so on and so forth. Kind of messed up the spacing with the starting lineup. Now they have Nurkic there, who played very well off of Lillard, who we know come playoff time is a different beast. Even though he was a different beast, yes, Dame time, as I see, it's a little blurry, but I still see you doing the Dame time celebration. There's a
Where's
reason.
your jersey, by the way? Your Dame jersey.
I just wore it. I wore it in New Hampshire, so it's in the wash, actually.
Okay. Well, I respect that.
How a fan I am. And hygiene, yes. But playoff Lillard is a different beast, and I think that, given Nurkic being back, the time off, they had a chance to make the playoffs, which is what Lillard was calling for from the NBA. He's like, I'm not playing unless we have a real chance to make the playoffs. They do. They could easily top the Pelicans. And if they're in a play-in series with the Grizzlies, I definitely see the Blazers beating the Grizzlies in that instance. And, I mean, that'd be an interesting series to see, too, the Trailblazers and the Lakers, 2 of the bigger players in the league. Lillard, LeBron, Davis, some real stars right there. Obviously, we'd want to see Zion as well. I'm fine with either or, but nonetheless, I think the Trailblazers, with this weight, are much better off than they were before it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It'll be interesting to see what kind of an impact Nurkic and Collins both have, given the fact they've had so much time off due to injuries. Are they going to be rusty? Most likely. But I think that will bode well for this Blazers squad. My 3 words, and you kind of alluded to this, they wanted this, specifically Damian Lillard. He came out and said, like you said, if the NBA season does restart, I will only play if we have a chance. And they do have a legitimate chance. They will take on Memphis as in one of their games, but they also have some tougher games, taking on 7 current playoff teams in Boston, Houston, Denver, LA, Clippers, Philadelphia, and Brooklyn. So those are no cakewalks outside of maybe Brooklyn and Memphis for them. And it's going to be huge for them, very important, to just match the Grizzlies in wins, because they'll force a mini playoff. If they force the Grizzlies in wins and don't lose and win more games than win more games than the Pelicans, they have a mini playoff and they have a legitimate chance of making it to the 8th seed. I will say, though, I do think the NBA and the TV networks would rather see New Orleans make it over Portland, because just the revenue that they've lost in having Zion versus LeBron, who wouldn't want to see that? But like you mentioned, Dame time in the playoffs is a different beast, and I think he will come out. And we get to see Carmelo Anthony. One other point to note, though, CJ McCollum's got to emerge as a second star. He's shown flashes of it. I don't know if he 100% is. Big opportunity for him.
He did in last year's playoff, and I think the NBA, as you just said, does want to see Zion in the playoffs, which is probably why they gave him the easiest schedule for the remainder of the regular season.
Well, no, that was based off their schedule prior to the shutdown.
Oh, they didn't change anything?
So how it was we probably should have mentioned this off the top, let's be real, but we're an hour and 20-plus minutes in, so better late than never. They were going off remaining games for the schedule, and then if a team were to play one of the 8 teams not there, so like the Knicks, the Hawks, the Warriors, etc., they would just go on to the next opponent. And the Pelicans had the easiest schedule remaining in the NBA, and they probably would have played more of these easier teams like the Knicks and so on. But it's obviously the Knicks aren't there, so they play the next opponent on their schedule.
I thought the NBA was tampering a little bit, but that's my mistake. Sorry.
I mean, it would be kind of funny.
It would make sense too, but Moving on, now we have the Sacramento Kings. My words for them, bad news Bagley. He just can't seem to stay healthy. He
Nope.
only played 13 games in the regular season. They thought with this time back he could rehab and come back to this team, but he just got injured again. He won't be playing in the bubble at all. So their second overall pick, which they drafted over Luka, over Trae Young, over all these players in a couple years ago, he hasn't really done much for them. He can't seem to stay healthy. Some other guys who have actually been rejuvenated with health, De'Aaron Fox, he's come back from injury. Harrison Barnes is COVID-free now after he was one of the first players one of the first players towards the NBA bubble's return to be tested with it. Also, Rashawn Holmes, funny story with him.
Yep.
His quarantine's over after he left mistakenly to get some Postmates. But so the rest of their roster looks pretty good. They're young. They have some potential, and a lot of people were pretty high on them going into the season. But without Bagley, who's one of their key young pieces moving forward, it's really tough to really judge what the Sacramento Kings team really is. And with them being more games back than the Trailblazers, than the Pelicans, so on and so forth, it's not looking like they'll really make a splash and have a chance really to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm going to just keep it short and sweet here. Maybe they can. They have a chance. Obviously, they're tied with Portland and New Orleans in terms of games back of the 8th seed. But they're probably the least likely to do so. The health thing is a huge. Fox healed. Harrison Barnes all going to be back. But Marvin Bagley obviously will be out most likely. Bogdanovich, the other one who we mentioned earlier. They all can carry this team, but it's just going to be really tough there. They will have 2 games against New Orleans, which will be huge if they want to have any shot of leapfrogging. If they can win those games, their odds increase immensely. But going 1-1 and obviously 0-2 just means that the Kings will probably have to look to 2021. And they need a big-name player to come to play around this young core. Similar to the Heat with Jimmy Butler, they need someone like that to come here and lead this team. Because they got all the young pieces, they just need a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the San Antonio Spurs now, playoff streak over.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since we haven't seen the San Antonio Spurs in the playoffs, but I think this year will finally break that streak. They have none of the players they've had with all those playoff games. Obviously, no Tim Duncan, Ginobili, Tony Parker, not even Kawhi Leonard, not even Danny Green, and now not even LaMarcus Aldridge, who helped get them to the playoffs last year. He's not going to be playing in the restart. So this team is just a mishmash of some veterans, some young guys who've been injury-prone, don't know what they have in them. Some guys like DeRozan, who were stars at one point, have kind of fallen off a little bit, aren't a great fit on this roster. It's not a pretty roster to look at. There's not a lot of exciting pieces. There's a lot of uncertainty. The only real thing we know is that they have a great coach, but he's been coaching for over 2 decades now. It's like he might be retiring soon. And there's just a lot of uncertainty going into this Spurs team, and it's looking like they won't be making the playoffs for the first time in a while. So if you're a San Antonio Spurs fan, you haven't felt this way in a while, but it's not a very good feeling.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it. It's just time to rebuild. That's my 3 words, time to rebuild for them. This will be the first time they miss the playoffs in 22 straight seasons since 1997, 1998, otherwise known as Tim Duncan's rookie season. And it would be the second time they've missed the playoffs in the last 30 seasons. So a great reign of dominance for the Spurs, but obviously LaMarcus Aldridge not going to be there. He's got surgery. They're too far back, I think, to make any noise. They got to leapfrog so many teams just to get to the 9th seed. It could be way too difficult. DeMar DeRozan, I don't think he can carry this team. Like you mentioned, once a star, he's still really good, but he's not what he once was. He's a shell of his former self. I think now is the time to start getting rid of some of those older vets, Aldridge, DeRozan, Patty Mills, et cetera, and just focus on beginning to rebuild around guys like DeJounte Murray and Lonnie Walker. And honestly, I think this might be Pop's last season. I don't think that gets talked enough. I think Popovich, he's had all this success with this team and this franchise. Sure, it probably won't end on the note that he would have liked it to, but the guy's a Hall of Famer. He's had so much success. I think now it's time to pass the torch to whether it be Tim Duncan, his assistant coach, or my personal pick, and I think should get the job, Becky Hammon, who has done an immense job filling in for Popovich as an assistant coach and every now and then as a head coach.
Yeah, another 3-word we could do for this team is keep Pop healthy because he's one of the target COVID-19 concern groups. It'd be awful to have him get it in any way. So, really, I wish the Spurs weren't here for that sake because not only are they probably not going to make the playoffs, you got to keep a legendary coach healthy. You don't want him getting this virus. So, yeah,
he's probably safer in the bubble, though, than he would be in San Antonio, given the rise of cases in Texas.
Yeah. But moving on to the final team
it's been a long ride.
It has been a long one. The Phoenix Suns, product of 22. They, like the Wizards, like Spurs, whoever shouldn't have been on here. I don't know why they're here. I thought 20 teams would have been brought back. I thought that made sense. I thought maybe you bring the Wizards back so there's some competition in the East. But then if you don't include the Suns and the Spurs, I think we're just as fine without them as we are with them. I think it's unnecessary to have the Suns here and whoever else you want to put with them. There's just too many. They really shouldn't be here. They have some nice young pieces, obviously Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. That's cool. But they don't have a shot of making the playoffs, really. So I don't know why you're here.
Yeah, I agree. I've been looking at it. I originally kept it simple, just said they shouldn't be here. But I'm going to get funny with this. They're the veggie platter. They're like at a party when someone brings a veggie platter with dip. No one touches it. They just shouldn't be here. They just brought it to be nice, I think the Suns are here just to bring more revenue. They're 6 games back of Memphis for 8th. Just go home now. Save us the time. Goodbye. That's it.
Yeah. Well, that's all 22 teams, Suns included, even though he's ripped on them. Now before
Sorry,
we go,
Phoenix fans.
Yeah, for any of you who are watching. Before we go, if this podcast wasn't long enough, we have some time for some trivia based on the NBA bubble and on this weird circumstance we're in right now. So, Tyler, I have a question for you. Do you know how many days it's been since the last NBA basketball game has been played?
Not off the top of my head. Let me do a little math. So April, there's 30 days. So that's 30. 31 in May, 30 in June, and it's 29 in July. So that's like 120-ish. And then 20 or so, 19 days. I'm going to say 139.
Wow. 140 was the
dang it.
You were 1 off. That's crazy. Yes, the last game was played March 11th.
I thought it was March 12th. That's why.
Yes, but that was very impressive, though. I did not expect you to get that close. I never would have got that close. I mean, you did do the math, but still, that was very impressive.
I had to talk it out.
It'll be 141 days when we go to tomorrow, but there will be basketball back finally tomorrow night. The drought will be over. But then I kind of have a follow-up question for you that relates to that question. Do you know how many days the NBA season should have been if there wasn't no break?
I'm going to say it's less than 140. That doesn't make sense. I'm going to go with – you know what? I'm going to go with 140.
No, it wasn't 140. It was 176 games, though. Or 76 days. So when you put that into perspective, we almost had a full NBA season in between our NBA season.
Yeah.
Which is just wild to think about how long it's been since NBA basketball has been played.
Is that including the playoffs, though?
No. That's from the opening day to the last day of the regular season.
Okay.
In mid-April. So we almost had 2 seasons in one, but it's just a break instead.
Yeah. All right, my trivia questions for you. It's a 2-parter. First off, who had the longest winning streak entering prior to the shutdown?
So just in the regular season. Raptors did, right?
Yes, and do you know how long it was?
14?
No, it was 4. They had lost prior to that. They had that massive win streak, then they lost.
Oh, you're saying before the – oh, I thought you just meant in the regular season.
No, sorry. Before the stoppage. I should have been clearer. That's on me.
I still got the right team, though.
You did. And part 2, who had the longest losing streak prior to the stoppage?
Are they in the bubble, or is it like –
They are not in the bubble.
Go with the Cavs.
That would be incorrect. It's the Detroit Pistons. 5 games. Yeah. So there you go.
They're in tank mode, so that makes sense.
Yes. Well, that concludes this extendedly very long I need to go get some
Is
water.
it long though, or are all our episodes this long? Let's be real.
This is a long one. This is the double XL episode. But thank y'all so much for watching. Hope you enjoy the NBA's restart like we will. I'm sure, Ryan, you'll be on your couch. I will be on my couch tomorrow watching some basketball. Finally, for the first time in 141 days. Leave your comments down below in the description. We greatly appreciate your feedback. And until next time, Ryan, have a good one, my friend.